Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 7 English lesson on inappropriate pronoun shifts. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username, as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. Grade 7. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of inappropriate pronoun shifts. All right, so our chapter is inappropriate pronoun shifts. Our subject is English language arts, grade 7. And the lessons that we are going to focus on is under the chapter of inappropriate pronoun shifts is to correct inappropriate shifts in pronoun, number, and person. All right. So when it comes to pronoun shifts, right? Pronouns must agree with the antecedents either in number as well as in person. So pronouns must agree with the antecedents in number and person. So when it comes to our pronoun shifts, right, or pronouns, do not use a plural pronoun for a singular antecedent, or do not use a singular pronoun for a plural antecedent. So once again, we said that pronoun shifts or pronouns, right, they need to agree with the antecedents in number as well as in person. And remember, pronouns, it takes the place of a noun. Nouns, it names people, animals, places, or things, right? Or let's say people and animals or things. And pronouns are words like I, you, we, they, those are pronouns, right? So we are saying that the pronouns, it must agree with the antecedent in number and it must agree with the antecedents in person. And if we look at an example, right? If we look at the example, it says, a sea urchin. A sea urchin has long, sharp spines all over their body or all over its body. So a sea urchin has long, sharp spines. Do we say all over their body or do we say all over its body? We're talking specifically about a sea urchin, one sea urchin. And if we choose the correct one, because remember we said that you should not, it says do not use a plural pronoun for a singular antecedent, or you shouldn't use a singular pronoun for a plural antecedent. And if we choose the correct, if we choose the correct one, then we will say that a sea urchin has long, sharp spines all over its body. It refers to the sea urchin. We don't say their body because then we would say sea urchins as long. We would say sea urchins, but we are referring to one sea urchin, so we say over its body. So we don't use their. They refer to more than one. In particular, do not use a second person pronoun you or your to refer to a first person or third person antecedent, right? So we should not use the second person pronoun. A second person pronoun is like saying you or saying we, or saying your. So we shouldn't use it to refer to the first person or third person antecedent. And if you're probably wondering what an antecedent is, right? And an antecedent, right, is basically a word that we place near a pronoun, and that is to make it clear who or what the pronoun is referring to, right? It will show us who or what it is referring to. All right, it says at school, students need to take at least three English classes do we say before you graduate or before they graduate? So we say at school, students. I'm going to underline students to basically give you an idea that we're talking about more than one student. So students need to take at least three English classes before, do we say before you graduate or do we say before they graduate? All right, so we would then say they, because we are referring to more than one student. So we will say at the school, students need to take at least three English classes before they graduate. Not you graduate, they graduate. All right. And when you know the gender for a singular antecedent, right? So if you know the gender, then you may pick one gender or you can use both. For example, we say a chemist will often design his own experiment. His refers to a man. Or we can say a chemist will often design her own experiment, which refers to a lady. Or we can say a chemist will often design his or her own experience. Because now we don't know if we are making mention of a girl or we're making mention of a boy, sorry, a man or lady. So now we say his or her because now it's showing the specific gender, either male or female, right? So which means that when you don't know the gender for a singular antecedent, then you may pick one gender or you can use both. If we assume it is a lady, we can say design her own experiment. If we assume it's a man, we say design his own experiment. Or if we just don't know, and then we say a chemist will often design his or her own experiment, and that will basically refer to saying that it can either be a male or it can be a female. All right. So when it also comes to the pronoun, right? And when your pronoun is incorrect, or let's say when we use the word they, which is the pronoun. So the pronoun they is incorrect, which we are talking about if we were to use, a chemist will often use their own experiments, right? It is incorrect because the antecedent is something different. Okay. So now let's go to A plus students.ca where we are going to correct the inappropriate shifts in pronoun number and in person. All right, and we are doing the lesson of correct inappropriate shift in pronoun number and person. And once again, before we go on to our activity and before we do our test, right? Here it is more clear for you to see. And we say pronouns, it must agree with the antecedents in number and person. And do not use a plural pronoun for a singular antecedent, or we shouldn't use a singular pronoun for a plural antecedent, which means that if you are making mention of more than one person, right, then we shouldn't use a pronoun that is singular, that refers to one person, right, because you are making mention of more than one person. So let's say, for example, if we're talking about the students, then we're talking about their. If we're talking about a boy, we talk about him or his. We talk about the girl, then we're talking about her, right? So your antecedent, right, needs to agree with the pronoun And we said that we shouldn't use a plural pronoun for a singular antecedent, or we shouldn't use a singular pronoun for a plural antecedent. And do not shift. Remember, we said that our lesson is inappropriate shifts. It's like we need to correct inappropriate shifts. And it says that we should not, it says that do not shift person within a sentence. So we shouldn't shift person within a sentence. And if we look at an example, right? So it says that do not shift person within a sentence, which means that we should not use the second person pronoun, which is you or your, to refer to the first person or third person antecedent, right? And if we look at an example, it says at the school, students, which refer to more than one student, right? So we say students need to take at least three English classes because we are referring to more than one student. That is when we are talking about the plural, right? So students is plural. It refers to more than one person. So students need to take at least three English classes, and we say before they graduate. And the reason why we're using the pronoun they is because we students is a plural noun, so we use a plural antecedent. If we have a singular noun, like for example, or singular pronoun or singular antecedent, then we say, for example, a sea urchin has long, sharp spines all over its body. That is where we use a singular pronoun for a singular antecedent. And over here, we say we're using a plural pronoun for a plural antecedent, which refers to, because remember, plural refers to two or more people, things, and so on. Plural refer to only one. And we also said that, for example, when you don't know the gender for a singular antecedent, referring to one person or thing, then you may pick one gender or we can use both. So if we're referring to a chemist or a teacher or a policeman or a doctor, then we can say will often design his own experiment because we're referring to a male, which is the gender male. Or we can say a chemist will often design her own experiment, and her refers to a female. Or we can, if we refer to both male or female because we don't know who we're referring to, then we can say a chemist will often design his or her own experience. Because if you are maybe just randomly making mention of a chemist, but you don't know what gender it is, right? Then we just generalize by saying that the chemist will often design his or her own experiment. because it means that we can make mention, it can be any chemist. It doesn't have to be male, it doesn't have to be female. We're not specifying who it is, but we're talking about any chemist, male or female. All right. All right. It says we need to find the incorrect we need to find the incorrect pronoun and type it correctly. So we're finding the incorrect pronoun and we're going to type it correctly. It says a career in journalism can be incredibly rewarding despite its demands. News correspondents may not enjoy the long hours and frequent travel, but get the satisfaction of bringing groundbreaking stories to the public. And we need to find the correct pronoun that goes with or that responds or that basically goes hand in hand with the news correspondence. The pronoun that refers to news correspondence. So it says once again, a career in journalism can be incredibly rewarding despite its demands, right? News correspondence refers to more than one correspondent, more than one news anchor. News correspondents may not enjoy the long hours and frequent travel, but they can say they get the satisfaction of bringing groundbreaking stories to the public. So they is our correct pronoun that responds with our antecedent. All right. So now we're going to choose another example. You see, they is correct. Now we're going to find the incorrect pronoun and type it correctly. So we're going to find another pronoun, right, that goes with our antecedent. It says to be successful. So to be successful, a professional photographer can be anyone. So to be successful, a professional photographer should have a high quality camera and must have a good eye for interesting angles. So in order for you to be successful, then a professional photographer should have a high quality camera and must have a good eye for interesting angles. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, right, or the correct pronoun that goes with the antecedent, right, if we are making mention of a professional photographer can either be a male or it can be female, right? So we can either say to be successful, a professional photographer should have a high quality camera and he must have a good eye for interesting angle. Or we can say she must have a good eye for interesting angle. Or we can say he or she must have a good eye for interesting angles. Because if we're making mention of professional photographer, like I say, it is a profession that somebody's in. So which means that it can be a female or it can be a male, right? Or we can just say, since we don't know if it's male or female, we can say he or she must have a good eye for interesting angles. Because now we're referring to both. We can basically use both. We are picking both genders. All right, if you look at the next one, it says, if freelance writers, more than one, if freelance writers want to attract new clients, we're referring to more than one, should advertise online and in local newspapers. So if freelance writers want to attract new clients, then we can say they, because we're referring to more than one. We're talking about the freelance writers. So if freelance writers want to attract new clients, they should advertise online and in local newspapers. So they, it is our pronoun or our correct pronoun. And the correct pronoun, it refers to our antecedent, which is freelance writers. All right, so now we're going to our test where we are going to find the incorrect pronoun and type it correctly, or we're going to correct inappropriate shifts in pronoun number and in person. So we need to choose the correct pronoun that refers to the antecedent. So what I'll do is I'll underline what the pronoun needs to refer to, or I'll put it in bold. It says it's important for the members of any committee or team to communicate well as a group so you can work together effectively or so they can work together effectively. So we say it is important for members of any committee. It refers to more than one member. So it's important for the members of any committee or team to communicate well as a group. Do we say so you can work together effectively? Or do we say so they can work together effectively? And if we were to choose the correct option, since we are making mention of members of the committee, so that they can work together effectively. So they is our correct pronoun. An experienced traveler refers to one traveler, usually knows how to navigate through big airports and can easily find, do we say, their way around the new city, or easily find his or her way around a new city? An experienced traveler. All right, so we can say if we talk about experienced traveler, it refers to one traveler, usually knows how to navigate through big airports and can easily find, we can say, his or her way around a new city. Because they didn't say which gender it is. Remember, we specifically said if they don't tell us what gender it is, then we can either add his, we can add hers, or we can basically just make mention of both genders, which is his or her, and that will still refer to the experienced traveler. All right, so his or her is correct. All right, a career in journalism can be incredibly rewarding. Despite its demands, news correspondents may not enjoy the long hours and frequent travel. Do we say, but they get the satisfaction of bringing groundbreaking stories to the public? Or do we say, but you get satisfaction of bringing groundbreaking stories to the public? So we need to make mention of, or we need to choose the correct pronoun that refers to news correspondents, referring to more than one news correspondent. So we're talking about news correspondents. And if we talk about news correspondents, and if we were to choose the correct pronoun, then we would choose they. So news correspondents may not enjoy the long hours and frequent travel, but they get the satisfaction of bringing groundbreaking stories to the public. And they is correct. A good host knows how to make people feel comfortable. A good host knows how to make people comfortable. If one guest arrives alone, right? If a guest arrives alone, do we say making him or her feel welcome is especially important? Or do we say if a guest arrives alone, making them feel welcome is especially important? We need to choose the correct one. All right, if we are making mention of one guest, because they say if a guest arrive, one guest, then we will say him or her. Making him or her feel welcome is especially important because we don't know if it's going to be a male, we don't know if it's going to be a female. All we know it is the guest of the maybe the hotel or the guest of the restaurant or something, right? So we are making mention of him or her because it can be a him, it can be a her, it can be anyone. All right. We say candidates for the job will make a good impression if. So candidates for the job will make a good impression if. Do we say you are knowledgeable about the company's products and services? Or do we say if they are knowledgeable about the company's products and services? So we need to choose, do we say if you, or do we say if they? We are referring to candidates, which is more than one. Candidates. And candidates are people who applied for the job because candidates for the job will make a good impression if. So since we're making mention of more than one candidate, we say if they are knowledgeable about the company's products and services. All right, so if we are making mention of more than one candidate, right, because we're referring to more than one, then we say if they are knowledgeable about the company's products and services. A good manager, a good manager should be approachable and should encourage creativity. Do we say in his or her employees? Or should we say in their employees? A good manager. So a good manager, referring to one manager, remember? And the reason why I'm constantly saying either one or more than one, because I also want you to get the idea of what, you know, or how to use it. So yeah, I'm saying a good manager, meaning we're referring to one manager, should be approachable and should encourage creativity in his or her employees. And his or her is correct. To be successful, a professional photographer should have a high quality camera. To be successful, a professional photographer should have a high quality camera. And if we're referring to a professional photographer, we say, and he or she must have a good eye for interesting angles. All right, so if we want to talk about the professional photographer, like you mentioned, one photographer, and then we can say he's or her. All right, let's do the last one. It says one doctor needs at least 4 years of medical training and then must pass difficult board exams before, do we say before they can bring the practice medicine, or do we say before he or she can begin to practice medicine? We are making mention of a doctor, one doctor. All right, and if we refer to the doctor, one doctor, then we can say he or she. So a doctor, or let's say he or she, needs to at least have 4 years of medical training and then must pass difficult board exams before he or she can begin to practice medicine. All right, so he or she is correct because we are referring to either male or referring to female. Because remember, if we don't know who or what we are talking about, right, then we can say it's he or she, or we can use both. And we use both. So we can say pilots should carefully check every control in the cockpit before. Pilots, more than one pilot. Do we say before they request permission for takeoff? Or do we say before you request permission for takeoff? All right, so we can then say pilots should carefully check every control in the cockpit before they, because we're referring to more than one, request permission for takeoff. And they is correct. Well done. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on inappropriate pronoun shifts, and our pronoun needs to refer back to the antecedent. We cannot use a singular antecedent with a plural pronoun or a plural antecedent with a singular pronoun, right? All right, so this is the end of our lesson on appropriate pronoun shifts. Thank you very much, grade 7s, for joining the class. Till next time, goodbye. All right, goodbye. Have a good evening.